For this week's podcast, I'll be narrating a story that I published this past week set in the world of my Halls of Pandemonium challenge. This is the final story in a series that's been going on all month, so if you'd like to get caught up, check the link in the show notes. Rain and wind slapped Bradley's face as he emerged onto the deck of the ship. Ahead of them, a vast, swirling whirlpool cut through the sounds of the storm with a constant, low rumble. "Is this armor waterproof? Not sure why I didn't think to ask about that until now," Bradley said, looking down at the carefully constructed paper armor covering his body.
"It may appear to your eyes as paper, but rest assured, that armor you wear is stronger than steel,"
Lord Devereaux replied. Bradley looked back as the others emerged onto the deck. Gollum, not to be confused with Gollum, looked particularly silly in his story armor, but Bradley would never tell him since he seemed to think he looked really cool. Arnold's armor took so many stories to cover his muscular body that Bradley worried they would run out. Fortunately, though, the community had succeeded handedly in surpassing the final week's objective, so there were stories and power aplenty.
"I like this armor. I feel like some sort of barbarian whose name starts with a C,"
Arnold proclaimed. Bradley knew what he was referring to, but he kept his mouth shut to avoid copyright issues.
"Hey, the announcers look pretty snazzy,"
one of the announcers said, speaking in the third person. The two were admiring each other's story armor.
"Yeah, the crowd goes wild,"
the other said. Bradley's eyes wandered over to Finton, who winked from beneath his custom paper hat. The Viscount specifically said he wouldn't be accepting special requests, but Finton insisted that his hat be made from a Devine tail. The Viscount admired the request, so he made an exception. "Hey, Bradley, if you need a recap on the tomb where marigolds grow, you can borrow my hat," Finton said with a wink. "I think I remember it pretty well, thanks," Bradley replied. From behind Finton, Viscount Valegrave slithered out onto the deck, wearing a full sleeve of paper armor and even sporting a brand new paper monocle. Behind him, the warden stepped out, adjusting the story armor on his shoulders.
"Never thought I'd be wrapped up in anything like this,"
he said. "That makes two of us," Bradley replied.
"Is everyone ready?"
Lord Devereaux asked. Bradley nodded. "I think so." Lord Devereaux walked over to the ship's wheel and looked ahead to the churning whirlpool.
"Let us enter the heart of Pandemonium, my friends. Unfurl the sails."
The crew went to work. Bradley felt a knot growing in his stomach as the ship lurched forward toward the edge of the whirlpool. The entire world lurched forward as the ship crossed the threshold.
"Hang on to something!"
Arnold shouted. Bradley gripped the side of the ship as they tumbled downward into crushing darkness. There was a brief moment of falling, but then nothing. Bradley was standing on solid ground, or at least he thought he was, but he couldn't see a thing. "Hello?" he called out. As if reacting to his voice, a pinprick of light emerged in the darkness. Like a spark igniting, it grew and grew. The light seemed to be spinning around a central space. A halo of swirling, fibrous strings spun around a blackness beyond anything Bradley had ever seen. And it just kept growing. Bradley stumbled backward, retreating into the darkness as the fibers of light licked at him like flames. The spectacle resembled a black hole, but it was more violent, more unpredictable. "Beautiful, isn't it?" a familiar voice asked. Bradley turned to his left as Zal Ithra emerged from the darkness behind them. She held one of the lights in her hands. It stretched across her palms like a glowing string, dancing between her fingers. "Huh. I was wondering when I'd see you again," Bradley said, avoiding her galaxy eyes. Zal Ithra laughed. "Oh, child, you are mistaken." Her dress made of stardust began to shift alongside the rest of her body. She became taller, more weathered, with skin that looked like it had survived many storms, and eyes that looked like they'd seen far too much. The warden looked back at Bradley with a wink.
"I never left."
Bradley shook his head, trying to shake the thoughts from his mind. "Wait a second. You were the warden this whole time?" The warden shrugged.
"I'm the most powerful being in your entire multiverse. Surely you didn't think shape-shifting was outside my repertoire.
To what end? Why have you been helping us? Helping me? Bradley asked. The warden looked back toward the swirling mass of darkness and light in front of him.
It doesn't end, does it?
He asked. What are you talking about?
The war between my children and the wardens. You don't plan to ever write the ending, do you?
Bradley didn't respond immediately. He had never considered that fact. The synaptic sprawl was a mythos without beginning or end. But did that mean it always had to be at war with itself? I don't know, he replied. The warden nodded.
Yeah, that's the answer I expected, but it's better than the one I feared. You see, Bradley, I am your muse, but I am also your creation. By that very virtue, I cannot destroy you, and that's fine. After all, without you, I would cease to exist.
Bradley heard footsteps echoing in the infinite space around them. The warden continued.
If there is a way for my children and I to know peace, the only way we'll find it is if you keep writing.
The footsteps were getting closer. I think I understand, Bradley said. You can't stop me from writing more synaptic sprawl stories or novels, and you don't want to. The warden nodded.
Precisely. But there is one who can stop you. One who can take away your spark and snuff out your creative fire.
A figure stepped into view. The only person who can stop me from writing is me, Bradley whispered. The mass in front of them grew once more, unleashing a blast of light that temporarily illuminated the mysterious new arrival. It was another Bradley, an imposter. What do you think? The imposter asked. Like what I've done with the place? Bradley stepped forward, his legs shaking beneath him. So, this is what a nexus looks like. The imposter grinned. Yes! You were always too scared to try and describe it. You knew what it was, but your imagination was too limited to put it into words. And yours is somehow better? Bradley asked. The imposter laughed. Oh, Bradley, sweet, sweet Bradley. Everything about me is better. My imagination, my prose, my dialogue, my output. I'm the version of you that you wish you could be. After all, I have the power of pandemonium flowing through my veins. Bradley clenched his fist. You're not walking through that nexus. In fact, you're not walking out of here alive. The imposter smirked. Oh, right, yes. You have your fancy story armor. Did you ever stop to think about how every single one of those stories and poems you're wearing is better than anything you could ever write? The imposter pointed to the armor Bradley wore. Seems a little hypocritical to be wearing their work instead of your own, but I suppose you know that your own stories could never hold the same power. Bradley knew he was trying to get under his skin. It's not about who's better or worse. It's about creativity, about writers putting their stories out into the world. Oh, I agree. I just don't think yours hold much weight. That's all.
Only one of you can walk out of here alive,
the warden said. The imposter grinned. Yes, enough talk. It's time to reboot the synaptic sprawl with a new, more capable writer. The imposter charged at Bradley. Bradley threw his hands up in defense and shut his eyes, but paused when he heard the clang of metal.
Bradley, don't worry. I'm going to turn him into protein powder,
Arnold shouted. Bradley opened his eyes to see Arnold standing between him and the imposter. Arnold had slammed a mixing bowl over the imposter's head. Ah, yes, the imposter said from within the bowl. Your mediocre impression of Arnold, complete with his own cooking show. How original! Hey, cooking with Arnold is the best thing since Predator. You take that back, now! The imposter threw the mixing bowl off his head and turned to the nexus behind him. He reached out, and a fiber of light shot out toward his hand. He caught it, and much like Zal Ithra, wove it into a braided rope with his hands. Pure creative energy. Powerful in the right hands, but deadly to anyone beyond pandemonium, the imposter said. He wrapped the braided light around Arnold's neck and pulled it tight. The rope singed the pages of Arnold's armor, burning through it at a rapid pace. "Arnold, hang on!" Bradley shouted, running toward them.
Hey, don't worry, Bradley. We're here to help.
One of the announcers shouted. Bradley looked to his left as the two announcers came into view. They both grabbed onto Imposter Bradley's shoulders and pulled him back. "Thank you so much for announcing your arrival!" The imposter cackled, swinging his rope of light around toward them.
Oh, yeah. In hindsight, that probably wasn't the best idea,
the other announcer said, just as the rope hit both of them. The smell of burnt paper filled the air as both the announcers reeled backward, clutching their chests.
Ah, it burns!
One of them screamed. Bradley ran toward the imposter while he was distracted. He tackled him to the ground. The other Bradley just smiled in the light of the Nexus. Bradley wrapped his hands around the imposter's throat and squeezed. Yes, yes! There's that anger, that resentment for a world that does nothing but beat you down! Bradley ignored him and kept squeezing his windpipe. All reason had been replaced with adrenaline. He wanted the imposter gone. Ask yourself, Bradley, will this fix anything? Will my death suddenly make you feel like your life matters? Will you suddenly think you deserve any of the support you receive? Will you finally believe your success is anything more than an accident? Bradley felt his grip loosening. The imposter's words were burrowing into his mind.
Stinky little hobbitses thinks they can get into Bradley's head? Well, let's see what's inside yours.
Bradley looked up as Gollum dove onto the imposter's head. Gollum's gray and rotting teeth dug down into the flesh of the imposter's ear.
Give us the tasty brains!
He cried. Bradley let go of the imposter's throat and stood up. Gollum continued gnawing on his head, but the other Bradley didn't seem fazed by it. We're not supposed to kill him, Bradley whispered. Finally! Now you're getting it. Bradley looked to his right as Finton Marybrook laid a hand on his shoulder. Finton, there you are. I wouldn't miss this. And besides, Devine hasn't had any action in months. It's been like a month and a half, tops. Finton shrugged. Details. The point is, I'm here to help. Another hand, this one more bony, landed on Bradley's other shoulder. He looked over as Lord Devereux and Viscount Valegrave emerged beside him.
The Viscount and I are here as well,
Lord Devereux said. Though it seems you've already cracked the case, the Viscount said. Bradley nodded. Yeah, I think I understand what needs to happen. Gollum climbed off the imposter, licking his lips.
He doesn't taste very good.
Bradley stepped forward and held out his hand. The imposter looked at him with wide eyes. What are you doing? He asked. I'm helping you up, Bradley replied. The imposter scoffed at the offer. He climbed to his feet, his black eyes wandering between everyone. Oh, goody. More fuel for the fire. Which one of you wants to go first? He asked. Finton sighed. By the Titans, this Bradley is even more dense than the real one. Bradley resisted the urge to say something in his defense. What about you, story eater? Don't you wish to devour my form? Pure creativity. Quite the flavor, I'm told. Lord Devereux shook his head.
I've come to learn that creativity tastes best when molded by the hands of a human. I never thought I would say this, but I'm not hungry.
The Viscount gasped. Cousin, be reasonable. Bradley looked back to the imposter. He took one step forward, closing the distance between them. What are you doing? Imposter Bradley asked. Bradley fought back tears as he took another step forward. Something I should have done a long time ago. Without hesitation, Bradley raised his arms and pulled the imposter into his embrace. The imposter writhed beneath him, struggling to escape. What the hell is this? Get off of me! I don't want your sympathy! He shouted. Bradley shut his eyes to stop the tears, but they came anyway. It's not sympathy. I've spent my entire life running from you, trying to convince myself you're wrong. Every time you spoke, I just beat myself up instead of showing myself the same grace I extend to others. Bradley said. The imposter's resistance ceased. I don't understand. What are you saying? Bradley sighed. I'm saying that I should have been nicer to you. Nicer to myself. You were born from trauma, from fear, from a deep-seated hatred of me. I'm telling you that I'm done with all of that. Bradley stepped back, wiping the tears from his eyes. Everything that's happened to us isn't our fault. We didn't deserve it. Bad things just happen sometimes. That's how the world works, but it's nobody's fault. Imposter Bradley growled in frustration.
Are you kidding? Do you remember what we've been through? No one should have to suffer like that unless they deserve it.
Bradley reached up and pulled off a piece of his story armor. Written on it was a story from the Halls of Pandemonium challenge. He recognized it. It was one he'd read on the podcast. If we truly deserve to suffer, then how do you explain this? These stories, this community, this place that we've built. Do you think this many people would stand with us if we were some kind of horrible person that deserved to be alone? Bradley asked. Before Imposter Bradley could speak up, the armor in Bradley's hand shot out like a bullet. It slammed onto the imposter's shoulder. Steam rose from his body. The imposter screamed in pain as more of Bradley's armor left his body and attached itself to the other Bradley. Before long, all of it had been transferred. Imposter Bradley fell to his knees as the screams finally ceased. He sighed from beneath the helmet, the last piece that had been transferred. If it wasn't for them, you would be nothing. Just another lonely, sad writer who thinks he can tell stories, he said. Maybe. Maybe not. Either way, I have people who believe in me. That's enough of a reason to keep going, Bradley replied. A flash of light exploded from within the armor as Imposter Bradley disappeared. The armor shattered into pages that fell like autumn leaves as the others gathered around.
Is it over?
Gollum asked.
For now, yes,
Lord Devereux replied. Bradley looked around for the warden. Where's the warden? Bradley asked. Gone, I assume, Finton said. I can't imagine Zal Ithra has any more need for us, now that Pandemonium has been tamed. Bradley's eyes went wide. Wait, you knew it was her? Finton chuckled. Well, yes, it's not exactly an original twist. Bradley laughed. Okay, that's fair. You know, I'd much rather have you knocking me down a peg than that other guy. Naturally. The difference between him and I is that my critique is justified. And of course, it's all in good fun, Finton said with a wink. Bradley sighed. Okay, well, now what? Can we use the Nexus to go back? I believe so, the Viscount said. But time flows oddly here. I would record your podcast first, just to be safe. Bradley nodded. Right, that makes sense. Well, it's a good thing I've got the script memorized. Anyone bring a microphone? Bradley looked down as Gollum proudly presented his microphone to him. Time for the Saved as Draft podcast, he cheered. Bradley smiled. Thanks, everyone. Let's record the episode, and then we can go home. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 72 of the Saved as Draft podcast. You know, I had this idea in my head that all the stuff I was struggling with in May would stay contained in May, like somehow June would immediately be better. As it turns out, that's not the case. I'm still struggling with some stuff in my personal life, including ongoing issues with the home repairs, the cost associated with it, and of course, the insurance that you may have heard me complaining about. But I have to once again thank you all for your support, and of course, the donations that have come in on my Ko-Fi. As I said, I've been fighting with insurance and all these costs. It looks like it's going to be well over $15,000 that I have to basically go into debt for because nobody has that lying around. So all of those donations, they really help. They're helping me figure out, little things like groceries and stuff like that while I try to, navigate all these other costs. So again, thank you. I really appreciate all of you. and of course everyone who reaches out just to check in. It also means a lot. Every bit of support in every form, it means the world to me. So thank you. And we're going to take it one day at a time, because this community has once again picked me up when life beats me down. I know I've had a few big struggles like this since I joined Substack. The last year and a half has been crazy for me, with several things, all different but all equally stressful. So I really appreciate everyone showing up. And on a lighter note, as you may have seen me mention earlier this week, I recently announced that Saved as Draft, the podcast you're listening to right now, has crossed over 50,000 downloads since it first started back in early 2025. I am insanely proud of that milestone for my first ever podcast, and it's thanks to all of you who tune in every week. You all are the best. I hope you know that. So shout out to all of you. Now, rambling aside, today's episode is a big one. We'll start with our community spotlight and then move into a round of shout-outs handpicked from the Halls of Pandemonium challenge thread that I placed in my subscriber chat this past Tuesday. Once that's done, I'll be announcing the final winners of the Halls of Pandemonium challenge right here on the show. You can, of course, check the show notes to see the final leaderboards and links to Scriptorum to see the full leaderboard, but if you don't want to spoil it, stick around because I will be sharing the winners as well as their top stories and their final scores right here in this episode. So look forward to that. But that's not all. We've also got our weekly writing discussion this week, which is back to check out. And in this one, I asked for feedback about my writing challenges. So we'll hear from the community about how everyone likes the Halls of Pandemonium and the First Indulgence and Flash Fiction February and some of my other challenges that I've done since I joined Substack. I'm excited to see what people have to say about those. And once that's done, I'll be sitting down with this week's featured guest, KJ Harlow, to talk about his recently finished series, Slice of Death, which just wrapped up its 365th chapter. That means he posted one chapter per day for an entire year. It's a really cool project, so please look forward to that interview later in the episode as well. It is a fantastic one. And from there, we'll wrap things up with a look at next week on Substack, and I'm going to highlight a few other writing challenges that have started this month or that are upcoming, so you can check those out while you wait, and if you have prompt withdrawals, it should help. My weekly power-up prompts, of course, will be starting up again next week as well, so not too long for those either. But yeah, as you can tell, a big, big episode this week. So let's dive in first with our community spotlight. All right, and since June is Pride Month, I'm showcasing authors here in the Community Spotlight from the LGBTQ plus community, right here on the show. We're doing an expanded spotlight as well this month, and that will include a shout-out for one of our featured author stories. So, this week, the Community Spotlight is on an author by the name of Nova Hart. Nova Hart is a good friend of mine that I've known almost my entire time on Substack, and she's always been a huge supporter of not only my work, but the community as a whole. Her stories combine uncharted worlds and daring heroes, all wrapped in epic adventure. Her work spans science fiction and fantasy. She's known for her ongoing series, The Crown of Ashes and Blood, which has 3 books published so far and tons of chapters you can read right here on Substack as well. Here's a summary of the first book in her series, straight from Amazon. Earth's final days are upon humanity as a massive asteroid, Xena Epoch, hurtles toward the planet, destined to obliterate everything in its path. Blue is abducted from her home and sold to a buyer as part of a breeding pair. When she arrives at her destination, she discovers the planet is teetering on the edge of a brutal civil war. Now she must figure out how to survive, fight the growing feelings for her mate, and cling to the hope of returning home. So good. I love the premise of this series. So next, I'd like to read an excerpt from the latest chapter, spoiler-free of course. This is from part 30 of The Crown of Ashes of Blood, published May 30th on Substack. Outside the cafe windows, the city moved in gray streaks of rain and neon reflections. Pedestrians drifted under umbrellas while hollow ads flickered across the wet pavement. Eventually, Rise checked the time on his finger and stood abruptly. Hudson's been spamming me for 10 minutes. Mac, too. Apparently they found something we can use against Zed Meyer. That sounds promising, I said. With those two? It usually is. Hudson never gives up on anything. I know from experience. Rise chuckled. We paid quickly and stepped outside into the damp afternoon air. The smell of rain had hit my nose immediately. Rise walked ahead of us down the sidewalk, pulling up directions on his holo display. They're waiting near the tram station, he said. Try not to antagonize Mac this time, Riven. I never antagonize Mac. You called him intellectually decorative. Not to his face, Riven huffed defensively. Rise kept walking. The moment he moved far enough ahead, Riven grabbed my sleeve and pulled me closer. We need to tell him, he whispered harshly. No. Yes. His eyes flashed toward Rise before returning to me. Blue, he's completely delusional. He sounds like that cessed weirdo from the cafe. I lowered my voice. Not exactly. I love it. Nova Heart's writing combines this really nice world building with razor-sharp dialogue and really good pacing, as you can tell. It's got something for everyone, so be sure to subscribe and grab your copy of her books. You'll find links to her Substack and her author page on Amazon in the show notes. And of course, thank you for the support as always, Nova Heart. I'm super grateful to have you here in the community, and I hope you enjoyed your spotlight on this week's episode. All right, next up, we'll look at this week's final Halls of Pandemonium shoutouts before I announce the winners. But first, a quick word from this week's sponsor. Today's episode of the Saved as Draft podcast is sponsored by the Your Potato Digest podcast. Wait a second. A podcast inside a podcast promoting another podcast? Is that even allowed?
Hey, how did we get to the grocery store again? Oh no. Am I sleep eating again?
You need to watch your nocturnal calories.
It's fine. I'm bulking up.
But you're always bulking up.
Yeah, that's the way to be. Haha, get it? Like whey protein.
That joke doesn't work, Sizzles, when it's not in writing.
I don't know. I thought it was pretty funny.
Ah! Did that potato just talk?
Yeah, of course it did. We've seen talking potatoes before. Remember?
When?
On the Your Potato Digest podcast.
We were on another podcast?
Yeah, the one hosted by Hazel Allen.
But we don't have our microphone.
Hey, it's alright. Modern technology is nice and all, but sometimes you just have to russ it. Get it? Like rough it, but russet instead. It's a play on words, just like the way thing.
I don't get it.
Me neither.
Are you sure you two aren't potatoes? Because you're certainly dense enough.
What?
I'm so confused.
Oh, come on. That joke was Yukon gold.
Isn't this the talking potato that's constantly going through an existential crisis? Why are they making so many puns?
Because punses are the best way to deal with an existential crisis. Yeah, puns keep the darkness at bay.
Yeah, I guess you're right. For a second, I thought this russet was an imposter potato. An impostato!
Get out.
Looking for a new podcast to round out your rotation? Why not add some starch to your listening diet? Check out Your Potato Digest, hosted by Hazel Allen. Find a link to the latest episode in the show notes. All right, and we're back. For this week's shoutouts, I asked you all to share your favorite stories and poems from the Halls of Pandemonium challenge. I picked 7 to feature here on the show. Next week, I'll go back to my normal shoutouts process, which involves posting a thread in my subscriber chat every Tuesday, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, let's check out some new entries from last month's challenge before I announce the winners. First up this week is This Old House by Mina Howell. This was a poem for day 16 of the challenge, which asked for a story or poem about a home that changes based on who enters it. With this piece, Mina takes us into a house that is supposedly perfect, but in reality it's hiding nothing but rot and decay. Mina's poetry always hits the mark with beautiful word choice and pitch-perfect rhymes, but what I loved about this one is how she incorporates some dialogue and characterization into the piece as well. We learn about how one character made promises he couldn't keep, lying until the moment she stepped inside. The other character, however, sees right through the lies and into the truth of the house. There's a lot of parallels here that I really enjoyed. Great poetry has layers, I think we can all agree, and this one is full of them. You can easily connect the metaphor of the house here to the characters and their relationship. On a personal note, this is also exactly how I feel about my house. And it's like this whole place has been cursed and is slowly rotting around me while I'm desperate to escape. So for that reason, this piece really resonated with me. Let's check out an excerpt. He described the marble counters, our initials in the baseboards. He promised me the perfect life after stabbing me with swords. He covered my eyes as he walked me to the door, but as soon as I stepped inside, every step I'd grow to deplore. To my utter disgust, this was nothing like he'd said. The wallpaper peeled to the floor, and mold filled the walls instead. His eyes waited my response, so full of anxious joy, but when I fell to my knees, he began to play coy. "How could you do this?" I yelled through my tears. "I can't believe I trusted you, after all the lie-filled years." Exquisite work as always. Remember to check the show notes for links to all the shoutouts this week. Next up in this week's shoutouts is Thoughts Before the Storm by Daniel Coates. So this one is for the prompt where I asked for a dialogue-only story with associated dialogue tags. So basically 98% dialogue. Not only did Daniel navigate this limitation really well, but he wrote this entry as part of a larger, ongoing story that he did over the course of the entire month. In total, 12 of the 16 stories Daniel wrote for the challenge are all part of this same narrative. I believe a few other writers did something similar as well, and I think it's an insanely cool idea to try and tie your stories together like this. It's not easy though, so shout out to Daniel for thinking outside the box with this one. Now, with this piece, I love the pacing of the dialogue. I think most writers know this, but creating a believable conversation that flows well is a lot easier said than done. And Daniel's done that here. He weaves in elements of the narrative and little comments and observations that move the story forward as well. I don't want to spoil anything here since it's right in the middle of his ongoing series for the month, but you'll find a link to his directory there in this post as well if you'd like to dive in and see the whole series. In the meantime, let's check out a short excerpt. "Oh, you poor, innocent thing. It will be so very much worse if we don't stop it." Determination bordering on eagerness colored Rob's thoughts. "I'm in. I have a score to settle with that monster." "What about you, Miss Innocent?" "Can we get our bodies back?" Kate asked quietly, even though she was sure she already knew the answer. "I don't think we can plan on that. I'm sorry." His thoughts were accompanied by a wave of sympathy and remorse. Rob thought grimly, "I'm sorry, Katie, but if what he says is true, we can't let that evil monster kill everyone. I can't let it. I don't mean to preach, but I've seen what greed with power will do. We can't rely on some unexpected ally to come and save the day. If we don't stop it, no one will." "You're right. I know you're right. I just hate to think that that was it. My life is already over," Katie thought. "I'm so sorry, Katie." "You probably don't want to hear it from me, but I am sorry too, Katie. Also, I feel like I qualify as an unexpected ally coming to save the day a little, even if it means we all die at the end." "I will help. But you're right. I don't want to hear that from you. You are the same thing as vanity. What's in this for you? Did you suddenly grow a conscience after eating so many people?" Amazing. I love that conversation there. Really, really cool stuff. Great work from Daniel. Next up in our shoutouts this week is Second Blood by Anton Anderson. This one is a continuation of one of Anton's other entries, but this story also stands on its own remarkably well. What I loved here was the tension that Anton achieves as one character tortures and interrogates the other. It's a horrific setup, but it allows us to get into the mind of the protagonist and understand why they're doing this. The answers come slowly, but eventually you may find yourself understanding their methods by the end. There's a lot more going on here, and the context is key. So be sure to check the trigger warning before diving in. There's one at the beginning of the story, but here's a short excerpt that's friendly for everyone to listen to give you an idea of what's in store. I sigh, carefully shedding a little bit of his blood, trying to ignore the empty feeling in my stomach. "Do you know what kind of rite of passage I went through?" I ask, seeing flashes of what happened just recently, feeling that smell, hearing those sounds, sensing blood and all sorts of bodily liquids on my hands. The answer doesn't come. Well, then you've got no idea why I can't turn back. I use his momentary cry to shove the gag back into his mouth. Maybe my hammer broke his shoulder, maybe not. But the muffled curses coming from behind the gag tell me that he's in great pain. Now, you can continue to waste my time. I show him the hammer, making his head recoil. Or you can tell me what I need to know. His heavy breathing eventually subsides, and he nods. Amazing. I love the tension just in that excerpt alone. Great work. Next up, we've got The Archivist by L.G. Wells. Really excited to see LG back and posting content. This piece is for the prompt where I asked you to write something inspired by the real-world urban legend of the man from Torrid. That urban legend has since been debunked, but I love the concept. So in this story, LG plays things out as if they actually happened. Now, if you've never read LG's work, one thing you'll notice right off the bat is that his writing is very immersive. He's got very strong imagery, really descriptive word choice, and nice punchy dialogue. He'll have you locked in, fully immersed in the world within a few sentences, a paragraph at the most. And here he does that. But he takes things a level deeper, using some mixed media elements that I really love to see. So in this case, he includes a moment where a character's computer gets hijacked and suddenly they're seeing a live transcript of an interrogation happening miles away. LG uses different font and formatting here to pull the reader into this new POV, and it works so well. So whether you enjoy a good mystery, you like fast-paced intrigue, or you're like me and you geek out over mixed media storytelling, this one truly has something for everyone. Let's check out an excerpt. In a room that reeks of industrial cleaner and stale sweat, a man sits in what would seem to an observer as quiet contemplation. He sits, hands folded in his lap, while his mind replays the violence that he has experienced firsthand, the violence he fought his way to this iteration to try and stop. The ID, the intentional flag, was his way of getting inside the system, hoping to be able to warn them before it was too late. The silence in the room is broken by the abrupt slamming back of the steel door. Miles away at a desolate rest stop in New Mexico, an author, a rogue chronicler of unexplained phenomena, stares at his laptop, the battery icon flashing a terminal red. He isn't typing. He's listening to an impossible conversation. As he goes to close the laptop and begin his quest to locate a place to charge it, something stops him. A sudden, biting shock of static electricity that jumps from the edge of the screen, freezing his hand in place. Then the glitch strikes. His screen flickers a violent purple, and terminal windows begin to open in a cascade across his desktop. Encrypted data directories unzip in rapid succession. I love it. It's just so good. Even that excerpt captures a lot of what I mentioned. Awesome work from LG as always. Next up, we've got La Nuit Rouge by Hallie Jules. With this story, Hallie decided to try her hand at a thriller, and I love it when writers expand their horizons and try out new genres during challenges like this. So this was for the prompt about a detective investigating a string of murders tied to a videotape. As you can probably guess, I was very inspired by The Ring for this prompt. I wanted to bring back that concept in a prompt that allowed for multiple iterations. And with this story, Hallie proves that she can absolutely write a tense thriller. The story dives deep into the content of the tape and how the killer here is recreating elements from a film. I loved how she took the time to really show the details of the film and how they match up with the events of the case. And the repetition of the phrase, "nothing good ever happens after dark," both in English and French, creates this amazing sense of dread that permeates the entire story. For me, a great thriller keeps you on the edge of your seat the entire time, and this story absolutely does that. Let's check out an excerpt. Suddenly he was 8 years old again, standing barefoot in the narrow hallway of his granny's tiny duplex, watching her install new locks and shiny brass bells above the door. At that age, Miles tended to wander in his sleep, and Granny had discovered him one too many nights outside at 3 a.m., staring into the night. "Nothing good happens after dark, mon chéri," she used to say. Sweat beaded at Miles' temples as the scene cut abruptly. The camera angle was wrong somehow, the lighting a shade too amber. Another blonde woman, dressed for the club, hung from the balcony of a secluded French Quarter hotel. Her body swayed gently in the breeze as a church bell somewhere nearby struck 3 times. The murderer was nowhere to be found, but the phrase sounded once again in strained French. Nothing good happens after dark. Miles coughed through his next drag. It felt as though the room was closing in on him, metal shelves encroaching like prison bars. The final murder was about to unfold. Though Miles knew every move the killer would make, he watched with an overwhelming sense of dread. Amazing. The atmosphere alone in that excerpt is incredible, but again, you can see how that phrase pops up a few times. It's such a good story. Please check it out. Like I said, links to all of these in the show notes. Next up, we've got Death Takes a Vacation by Tina Crossgrove. So this story was for day 2's prompt about the sinking of the Titanic. The premise here is so good. The concept is that Death himself decides to take a vacation, and of course, of all places, he picks the Titanic. My favorite part about this story is the characterization of Death. We've seen the Grim Reaper portrayed in countless stories over the course of history, so it's not easy to offer up something that feels fresh. But that's exactly what Tina has done here. There's a dry humor to the way he talks, but there's also an unexpected warmth and mercy to how he conducts himself that I really enjoyed. Now, I don't want to spoil too much, but if you like unique, original, well-paced storytelling with great characters, this one is a must-read. Here's an excerpt. Later, once again in the Mr. Graves skin suit, Death watched as chaos erupted. Maggie Brown found him near the rail. "Mr. Graves!" she called, as though they were still discussing dinner. "You look like a man who knows what's happening." "I'm afraid I do," he said. "Well?" she asked, breathless but still somehow conversational. "Is it bad?" He considered the question. "Yes," he said. "Thoroughly." She laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. "Well, that's comforting in its own way." It was not, but he appreciated the attempt. When the time came to choose, he did not need to deliberate. She had made him laugh once. That was, in his current mood, an extraordinary kindness. He guided her toward a lifeboat. Not all kindness needed explanation. I love it. Fantastic stuff. Next up in our shoutouts is The Sampler by Bent But True, aka Victor Clubb. This was for day 8's prompt, which was called the App Sampler, and asked for a story with 3 different genres. Now, what I love about this piece is how Bent But True not only weaves in multiple genres, but also multiple locations, and even a sampler element of his own within the story itself. Those layers here are precisely the kind of nuanced storytelling that I've come to expect from Victor. I also love how his signature pacing comes through here. He writes with short, punchy lines and dialogue that keeps the story moving. And the structure here is excellent too. It pulls your eye right through the page, and the writing keeps you hooked all the way through. Another thing Victor does is include an intro and outro to help you better consider the themes of the story. I love stuff like this. So for our excerpt, I'm going to read you both of those to give you an idea of what's in store for this piece. Let's start with Victor's intro. Some grief arrives all at once. Some arrives in portions small enough to survive. A smell, a song, a receipt folded into an old coat pocket, the sound of silverware somewhere it shouldn't be. Tonight's story is about the quiet systems people build to keep themselves functioning after unbearable loss, and the danger of staying there too long. Welcome back to the halls beneath ordinary life. Amazing intro. And now, here's a look at the outro at the end of the story. Maybe that's the real horror. Not monsters. Not hidden corridors beneath the world. But the possibility that somewhere inside ourselves, we are all portioning pain into manageable servings just to make it through another day. A spoonful of nostalgia. A swallow of fear. One memory kept. One memory surrendered. And maybe healing begins the moment we stop asking to feel less. If this one lingered with you, let me know what lines stayed behind after the lights came back on. So good. I love that. I love it, I love it, I love it. This is the kind of narrative bookend you would expect in something like The Twilight Zone or another anthology, but the way Victor does it, it has more intention behind it. It's less about set dressing and more about emotional assessment of the piece. It's really awesome stuff. Check it out with the link in the show notes. All right, and I've got one more bonus shout out for you here. Our sponsor this week posted a note saying that if this story isn't featured, they would riot. And I can't have an army of angry potatoes on my hands, so let's check out Grocery Store Tater Talk by Hazel Allen. This was for Day 28's prompt, which asked for a story or poem that has only dialogue. We saw another entry for this earlier in the shoutouts. With this piece, we get a look at the cast of potato characters that show up in the podcast that sponsored this episode here, and it's a wonderful introduction. A few of the characters are also voiced by members of the community, so it's really cool to see that the idea started here. In this story, we meet Gold, Jerry, Russet, and Sweet. As they're all discussing pressing matters, one of them gets picked up at the grocery store, and he seems to think it's a good thing, but poor Russet is spiraling because they know what happens to potatoes that get picked. And come to think of it, I'm starting to think that the Russet in our sponsor segment was an imposter from Pandemonium. An impostato, as Arnold put it. Hard to say. I mean, it certainly sounded like them, and shout out again to Wendy Russell, who voices Russet, for sending in some lines there. But I don't know. Were they an imposter? Do they often make puns? I don't know. Perhaps we'll find out more in a future episode. Conspiracies aside, let's check out an excerpt from this piece. Look, I'm telling you, we ain't surviving this. Them pesky humans are gonna chop us up, put us in stew. What?
Bro, you sure you ain't mashed?
Oh, hey, I think this person likes me. They just took Jerry. You think I'm mashed? Well, you look baked. Aw, thank you. No, that wasn't a compliment. Oh my god. Oh my god, you're such a dull spud. So funny. I'm loving all these potato-themed humor jokes with that podcast. It's right on brand. It's so funny. But that's it for our shoutouts this week. Next up is the moment you've all been waiting for. It's time to find out who took home the win in each of our 3 scoring brackets of the Halls of Pandemonium Writing Challenge. All right, my friends, the time is finally here. Let's find out who took home the grand prize in each of our 3 brackets for the Halls of Pandemonium Challenge. As you may recall, I run a poll before each challenge that decides the prize that everyone will win, and you all chose a special interview right here on the Save This Draft podcast. So, all 3 of our winners here will get a special slot on the show at some point in the near future, and at least 1 week before their interview, I will gather questions from the community to ask them as well. It was a really fun format that we used for Flash Fiction February's winners, so we're doing it again because you voted for it. I've also got Lord Devereaux and Viscount Valegrave here, of course, to share their thoughts on the winners.
Indeed, I am eager to crown our champions of the multiverse.
Yes, these are true heroes.
Alright, let's start with our lightweight bracket. In first place for the month, with 14 total submissions and a final score of 232 points, it's M. Brandon Robbins. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this was this author's first time joining one of my challenges, and he came to win. Several of his stories were featured on the show this month, and I loved every single one. In particular, his body horror piece was my favorite, but a close second is his top story for the month, The Downward Spiral, which was a poem for Day 11 that utilized the Fibonacci sequence in a really unique way. Our first ever math-based poem, I'm pretty sure.
Ah, yes. I recall that flavor combination. Prose and arithmetic. Truly an inspired choice.
I'll be honest, I thought Fibonacci was a type of pasta. Once I learned what it actually was, I was even more impressed. A pasta poem is one thing, but to incorporate math, truly incredible.
And a big congratulations to M. Brandon Robbins on the win. I'll be in touch soon to schedule your interview. Next up is our middleweight champion, and in first place, with 32 story entries, one for every day, including the bonus prompt, and a final score of 939 points, it's Namita. Namita's poetry this month was some of the best that I've read, and it was the Day 3 submission titled I Got Told that ended up being Namita's top entry for the entire month. This meta poem talks about the desire to stay on track with daily writing prompts and challenges, and lamented the struggle that comes with it. And yet, despite this, Namita submitted something for every single prompt, including the bonus. Truly inspiring. And if you're not aware, Namita also includes original art with each poem, making them a true feast for the senses.
Bradley, that's my line.
Sorry, Lord Devereaux, it's a common human phrase.
Very odd, given that you don't consume stories like we do.
Yeah, now that you mention it, it is kind of weird, huh?
Congratulations to Namita on this well-deserved win.
Art and poetry from a single author? Haha! Yes, please!
Yes, congratulations to Namita again. I'll be in touch soon to schedule your interview. And now, for our heavyweight champion. In first place for the month, with 32 total submissions and a final score of 2,774 points, it's Gary L. Taylor. So, Gary was another author who joined one of my challenges this month for the first time, and it quickly became clear that he's a force to be reckoned with. His work resonates with everyone, bringing in tons of likes, comments, and restacks, as you can tell by that final score. And through all this success, Gary has been a genuine, kind, and gracious champion. I've heard nothing but good things about him, I've had great interactions with him as well, and I've thoroughly enjoyed reading his work from this month. And look at that final score. Again, just amazing. Gary's top story for the month was Ship Comes In Every Day, which was for day 11's music-based prompt, and I remember reading that one on the show here. It's a beautiful combination of the chosen track's themes and some truly inspired word choice within the poem as well.
Gary's command of language imparts deep, rich, intentional flavors to his work. As a consumer of stories, I always left his submissions with a full stomach and a smile on my face.
I couldn't have said it better myself, cousin. I also particularly enjoyed his Sausage Jack character, who appeared in several stories.
Of course, right. Who can forget about Sausage Jack? I believe I first encountered him in the Man from Torrid story that Gary did. But again, a huge congratulations to Gary for coming in with this challenge and taking home the win for the heavyweight bracket. Really impressive stuff. I'll be in touch soon to schedule your interview as well. And that brings us to the end of another writing challenge, my friends. It's no secret that May was not kind to me in my personal life, so I have to once more shout out J.M. Gooding and Leron Haywood for making this challenge possible. Without them, I would have had to cancel the event outright just due to everything I had going on, but they kept things moving behind the scenes. So please, if you get a chance, send them a quick thank you, and subscribe to them if you haven't, because they're both insanely talented authors, as this month's entries from them will show you. And of course, a shout out to Scriptorum as well, the platform that hosted the challenge this month, a platform built by J.M. Gooding himself. If you're looking to host your own prompts or writing challenges, send J.M. Gooding a message to learn more about Scriptorum. It's open to everyone. It's his way of giving back to the community. All right, next up is our weekly writing discussion, but first, a quick mindful moment. Hey there, this is Chill Bradley, here with this week's mindful moment. Here's a quote to consider. Community is the antidote to despair. Anonymous. This quote was shared to me by my friend and friend of the show, Daniel Coates, author of The Water Thief on Substack and many other amazing stories, including a well-known Devine tale. And I love the fact that someone in the community showed me this quote, because it proves the quote is right. I was talking to Daniel about everything that's been going on lately in my life, and he shared this reminder that community is the answer. The question, of course, being, how do I get through this? My friends, it turns out we're not meant to do this alone. This little thing called life isn't a single-player game. We're meant to find connection, to find support, to find like-minded friends. We're meant to find community, and I've found that here with all of you. So for this week's Mindful Moment, I want you to think about what community means to you. Have you found your flock here, as the saying goes? I'd love to know what you think about this community in the show's comments, if you'd like to share. In the meantime, I just want to thank you all again for being here. Meeting all of you has been the highlight of my life, and I sincerely mean that. I appreciate you all so much. Thanks for listening. Back to the show. All right, and we're back. So this week I'm bringing back my writing discussion segment. This is where I read responses to a writing question I posed to the community on Wednesdays in my subscriber chat. This week's topic was writing challenges. I wanted to know what you think of mine since we recently wrapped one up. Is there anything that could be improved? And you know the drill. If you take the time to respond, I'll take the time to read your answers on the show. So let's dive in and see what everyone had to say. First up, Ocean Being says, I've done a few of your prompts and they've been very helpful. No complaints. Obviously, some of the genres or prompts don't spark anything for me personally because of my individual taste, but I actually like the variety. It also challenges us to think outside our box. Even though I didn't finish it and didn't post it, I did write a cozy bookstore story, which is very different for me. Actually, now that I think about it, maybe the genres should always be up to the writer. That would push me outside of my comfort zone, but not that much that I go blank. Well, thank you, first of all, Ocean Being, for the response here. And yeah, no, I would love to see more of your entries for the prompts. And I agree, there's a careful balance that I try to strike, and it's something that I will consistently, try to improve. But I'm always trying to incorporate as many genres as possible to not only bring in new writers, but to test other writers and push them to try new genres, because we've had people like Hallie Jules, for example, that wrote a thriller story that she's very proud of and should be. And then, last year we had Mary Ellen Brady doing horror for the first time, and she's a fantastic horror writer, and she didn't even know it because no one had pushed her to try that genre. So, yeah, I love the feedback here, and I like this idea, too, that the genre should be up to the writer. That's interesting. I might have to think about that for the next challenge. So, thank you again for that response. Anton Anderson says, I like weekly challenges. Even though I've written like 15 stories for that microfiction challenge of yours, Bradley, I didn't enjoy the time pressure, just like I knew I wouldn't. But weekly power-up prompts give me enough time to write comfortably. And if I don't like some topics, I can always pick one from the Pandemonium challenge instead. Yeah, that's a good point, Anton. The daily writing prompts, it's nice as far as a cadence goes, and it fits well into the span of a month. But I agree, there's a very high pressure when it comes to that, and people have expressed that in multiple ways. Some enjoy it, some don't. I myself, I think, lean more towards the weekly prompts, but of course I do those all the time with the power-up prompts, so the challenges are meant to be something different, a little more exciting. But I agree, maybe there's a way to kind of incorporate some breaks into the challenge where it's not prompts every single day. I've actually had a few conversations with members of the community about that, so we'll take that feedback into account for future challenges. Thank you, my friend. Wendy Russell says, ooh, great question. If you said to me a year ago, hey Wendy, you're going to write action scenes, science fiction, and horror, I would have thrown a string of expletives at you before bustling back to my witch's hovel. I've done quite a few of your prompts now, and especially loved the pressure cooker of the month-long challenges because they forced me into a completely different state of writer mind. Left to my own devices, I was perfectly happy cruising along in my rom-com, cozy vibes groove. Instead, Flash Fiction February pushed me into genres I never would have chosen for myself. For Pandemonium, the prompts where we had to face our muses were the most powerful. Yeah, those will sit with me for a while. The way they took us on a journey through our own relationship with creativity was so moving and such a gift. Another thing I particularly appreciate about your prompts is that they often ask us to step outside our comfort zones without feeling prescriptive. The challenge isn't just producing words, it's finding an unexpected way into an idea. The other joy has been seeing how differently everyone interprets the same prompt. I often end up discussing with Mary Ellen what a trip it is to see where everyone else's brains went. And of course, the other huge aspect of your challenges is getting to meet and know other writers. This is a truly wonderful way of being drawn into the community and has changed my relationship with writing. Wow. Thank you so much for that amazing response there, Wendy. I'm blown away. I mean, yes, everything you said is precisely what I hope to achieve with the challenges, and it's amazing to see that it resonated with you so much. And also, I have to shout out Wendy here as well, because she did sort of like compilations. The name escapes me, but she did some stories where she, with permission, took lines from some of the other Muse prompt entries and kind of combined them into a fresh piece. Really incredible stuff, and it was just such a beautiful gesture. And so, yeah, Wendy Russell, fantastic member of the community. If you're not already friends with her and you're not reading her work, please change that. She is so genuine and wonderful, and she's a fantastic writer. Thank you, Wendy, for that feedback. Next up, Hazel says, writing challenges are something I often struggle with due to time or energy, but I appreciate the sense of community and inspiration they bolster. Not every prompt is enough to draw me in, but when I do find one compelling, oh man, is it fun. And to be honest, I think with this last one, it actually makes me want to host my own month-long challenge, centered around the branding of my publication. Will that come to fruition? Not too sure, but we'll see.
No, I love it. I love it. Yeah, and yeah, I would love to see a potato themed month-long writing challenge. And I think this amazing author here, Hazel, could absolutely do it. And yeah, no, this is great. It's again like I'm someone who tries to, make everyone happy if I can, right? But I also recognize that in order to achieve the variety I want, I have to remember that some prompts aren't going to be as readily interesting to some writers versus others. And that's the beauty of creativity, is that it comes in so many forms. So again, I appreciate the feedback here, and I love that, again, this is inspiring other challenges as well, because that's also the goal. I really want other people to try their hand at challenges. I think it's super fun, and it's a great way to meet new people and build community. Next up, Lori McIntosh says, I think timing is key for me. If I'm deep in a project, I can't even consider it. But if I've finished a first draft and have entered the painstaking second draft stage, these writing prompts are great reminders that the fun part of my brain still works. I do want to mention I recognize the tremendous amount of work you put into all the monthly challenges, and that you should win all the prizes. Thank you so much, Lori. No, I really appreciate it. And it is crazy the amount of work that goes into these challenges. Shout out again to J.M. Gooding and Leron Haywood, because they really come through, especially this month. They both really made this happen with everything I had going on. So yeah, it's a ton of work, but it's worth it. So thank you again for that feedback. Mercedes D. Santiago says, I think they are interesting and force me to imagine things I wouldn't have without your challenges, but I can't do them all because I don't have enough time to do them all. And that's very true, Mercedes. I think we can all agree that that's something that we struggle with. I myself haven't done all of the prompts for any of my challenges after the first one that I hosted back last year in Flash Fiction February. It's just once the prompts got more complex, the challenges got bigger and more complicated, I found that I didn't even have time to do all of them. So totally valid, but we love having you here, and I really appreciate the feedback. Next up, Sarah Tinney says, I have written stories and styles I never would have tried if not for the challenges, and I have stories I'm proud of as a result that wouldn't exist otherwise. I feel the prompts for the May challenge were a bit less prescriptive, which I found much easier to manage, and I also like the variety with length. I'm unsure how I feel about the daily prompts. It is a lot of pressure, and I know I've produced some mediocre stories as a result. I wonder if a second daily challenge would work, or just get confusing, or daily prompts for 2 weeks and then 2 weeks for engagement, or three weeks writing, 1 engagement. I don't know. Clearly this is why I'm not organizing the challenge. I also need to let go of my perfectionism and just not write a story some days. But it's hard when I was coming second for most of it. So close. Yeah, Sarah, no, I really appreciate that feedback there, because I'm definitely considering a new structure going forward that's less pressure on writers, because I think a little bit of pressure is good, but too much is not what we're going for here, right? And I agree with you that some sort of new cadence that allows for breaks or an opportunity to breathe is good. I also think that you're on to something there by saying that you need to let go of perfectionism, because I think we writers in general, we always just edit and edit and edit until we think it's perfect, but it's never going to be perfect, right? Perfect is the enemy of good. And another phrase that I really like is, your story doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to exist, right? And so I want writers to come to terms with that and to allow themselves to put out something that is flawed, because art should be flawed, because by very nature of it being human, we are flawed, right? And you don't want typos or anything, but it doesn't need to be perfect either. Okay, so I agree with you. Love the feedback here. And yeah, I saw you at second place on the leaderboard there. Very, very close. But, I can't wait to see, next challenge comes around. I'm sure that you will jump in and climb that leaderboard once more. So thank you again for the feedback. Next up, Namita Call says, Hey, Bradley, thank you for the Halls of Pandemonium. JM and Leron too. Shout out to them. I had been observing and reading the entries to your monthly challenges hosted by you and wondered how anyone possibly managed to handle prompts with that speed. I struggled with several genres, attempted so many of them for the first time. I don't have a work in progress or existing characters, which was limiting and liberating at the same time for me. I loved meeting, reading, and interacting with other writers. This community is amazing and so supportive. Made new friends. I really enjoyed the microfiction ones. These were a relief between the longer version prompts, and Kira prompts, wiki roulette, mix and match of genres. The variety across the challenge really helped thinking beyond my comfort zone. prompts occupied my mind daily. I loved brainstorming ideas throughout the day and died creating into late hours of the night. Reading other entries gets difficult during the challenge, so I like the one last week was dedicated to further engagement. Scriptorum was such a blessing for this and the submissions both. But reading adds to the time spent while also attempting the prompts within the timeline. Struggled with that a lot. It helped knowing we could attempt them by the end of May and need not submit daily. I promised myself I'd try this once. I did, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. I'm proud of so many of my submissions. I had no idea I had 32 poems/creations within me in this timeline. The speed of creating and thinking these prompts has helped me attempt 2/3 photo prompts while I procrastinated over my entries. This was inspiring and really helped, so thank you again. This is so wonderful. I love this feedback, especially now that we know that Namita was one of the winners. Because yeah, there's a lot of good feedback here. Some of it echoes, again, what I'm thinking about future challenges. How do we make things a little bit more sustainable as the month goes on. So I appreciate that, of course, but I love that Namita had this experience and had such a good time, and of course, took home the win to top it off. Fantastic stuff. Thank you, Namita. Next up, Daniel Coates says, I thoroughly enjoyed both Flash Fiction February and Halls of Pandemonium. Your challenges are such a joy to be a part of, and I met and read so many new writers as well as deepened connections with people I knew already. Plus, the feedback and visibility boosts that come with it are a shot of joy that melts away the imposter syndrome like nothing else. All in all, amazing stuff, and I'm happy to be part of this community. Love that response from Daniel. I love that he called out the imposter syndrome angle, because that's what it's all about, right? Like, we get inspired, we create new stuff, we put it out in the world, and then, because we're part of this community and this challenge, we see that score and we see that success, and that washes away those internal doubts. And that, I love that. It's really great feedback. So thank you, Daniel. Next up, Leanne Schaller says, I thought I might be able to leap into Halls of Pandemonium. I see what she did there. So she says, I thought I might be able to leap into HOP. She abbreviated it. And she says, OMG, see what I did there. But the brain wasn't braining, mainly because I'm in the early stages of writing a draft, which is kicking my butt. I wasn't ever going to compete, but I thought I might respond to a couple, but it didn't work out that way. Well, Leanne, thank you so much for just jumping in and sharing your thoughts here in the discussion. I love that you were even considering the challenge. That's fantastic. And I love the pun with HOP, Halls of Pandemonium. I never realized that was the acronym. But yeah, no, it's all good. I do power up prompts every week outside of challenges, and then we'll have at least 2 more challenges this year as well. So I look forward to hopefully catching you then. But in the meantime, I hope that the draft you're working on continues to go well. And thanks again for the feedback. Next up, Vonnie G. Clemens Jr. says, they're fantastic, Bradley, and I do believe a large chunk of us actively look forward to them. I'll make the first announcement here, but I'm actually going to take all 31 prompts from Pandemonium and finish the serial/book Ruin Runes, using them in different iterations per chapter. Wow, that's fantastic. Well, first of all, Vonnie, thank you so much for the compliment there. I love the idea that people look forward to these. I know I do, so that's really nice to hear. But let's talk about this project. I love this idea, this Ruin Runes, where you're going to use the 31 prompts from Pandemonium and your entries within the book. That's fantastic. Really excited to hear more about that. And if you're not already checking out Vonnie's work, please do. I especially love the live streams that he does with Cooper, his dog, where he reads him bedtime stories. It is wonderful stuff. Fantastic writer here. So thank you again, Vonnie. Next up, J.M. Gooding, one of the people on the team this month, says, Bradley, I've always loved your prompts. I've mentioned before that I probably wouldn't be writing horror if it wasn't for one of your power-up prompts. I think some of my favorite story ideas came from power-up prompts and the Flash Fiction February event. As for the writing events, I guess I am in a somewhat unique position in that I was able to get a good look into the behind-the-scenes aspects of creating these events. And just for those in the class, it's a ton of work. Not just the prompt writing either. There's a massive amount of work that you put into organizing and keeping track of the prompts, submissions, scoring, and all the administrative stuff that goes into one of these events. And then you have to read at least a few of the entries for the podcast. And what with what's going on in your personal life, I honestly don't know how you did it. Even with Liron and myself helping out and Scriptorum helping out with some of the pain points, shameless plug, it was a lot of work to keep up with everything. I just don't see how you did it in the before times because it's absolutely nuts. Well, first of all, thank you, JM. No, I mean, JM Gooding and Liron, they really carried this challenge this month. Obviously, up until the first indulgence challenge I did last year, I never did any scoring, so that aspect wasn't a thing. But even then, as JM said, organizing it, writing the prompts themselves, keeping up with the entries, doing the podcast shout outs, it is a lot of work. And then you throw in the scoring, and that was where things just got so complicated. And that was the point, of course, that Leron Haywood jumped in and started helping. But of course, yeah, Scriptorum, I will plug that every chance I get. That platform is incredible, and it was the engine that drove this challenge. And I'm pleased to say that it'll be the engine that drives all of my future challenges, because I had such a great experience. And of course, I super appreciate JM Gooding's work as well. So thank you for that feedback, my friend. I really appreciate you. All right. Last up, Christy says, I don't think I've tried one yet, but I love challenges. I love that. So thank you, first of all, for joining the discussion this week, Christy. And I would love to see you join one of the challenges. Like I said, the Halls of Pandemonium is over. I'm planning something potentially for the summer. Definitely will have another horror challenge in October of this year. But in the meantime, every Saturday, starting with next Saturday, I'll be back to my power-up prompts, which last a week, and they show up every Saturday. And if you write for them, you get featured on the podcast. So please keep an eye out for that. And thank you again to everyone who submitted responses to the discussion this week. And our next writing discussion thread will be this coming Wednesday in my subscriber chat. So if you'd like to have your response read on the show, keep an eye out for that. But in the meantime, we are at the point in the show where it's time for our featured guest interview. All right, this week my guest on the show is KJ Harlow, the author of Slice of Death, which is a serial here on Substack that just concluded with its 365th chapter. That number is no accident either. The story takes place over the course of an entire year, and the author here factored that into his posting schedule. That's right, a new chapter every single day for an entire year. Truly impressive, and it's clear that this author is just getting started. Talk about an impressive debut. So get comfortable, and let's sit down to learn more about KJ Harlow and Slice of Death in our featured guest interview. All right, everybody. This week on the Saved as Draft podcast, I'm really excited to welcome to the show KJ Harlow. KJ, thank you for being here.
Hi there, Bradley. Thanks for having me.
So let's start off by having you tell us a little bit about yourself and your creative journey thus far.
Yeah. Oh, where do I start? I mean, basically, as just as like a person, I'm just like a sort of everyday guy. I'm not really any sort of professional, but I've always enjoyed writing. I was that sort of person in primary school, or as you guys call it, elementary school, who like writing stories and poems and things like that. And yeah, at some point, I think it was around 2018 or so, I was thinking, oh, you know what, it'd be cool to just like write and just like, write stories again. So I did. I wrote some stuff, a lot of, I guess you'd probably call it more like tropey pulp fiction type stuff. I think you have some experience with that. But yeah, like it did burn me out, and I took quite a long break. But essentially I started coming back to it just because I asked myself, if I was to do anything without, any guarantee of, financial success or anything like that, what would it be? And in the end, the answer was just writing stories, creative writing. So that's pretty much it. Yeah.
No, I love that. I love that. That's quite the journey, kind of coming in and out of writing like that. But I also understand, like, I've seen so many people, myself included, suffer from burnout. So it's one of those things where it's like, it can definitely take everything out of you, but then you know that you're on the right path, that writing is for you. If it's like you said, where you really just, you put everything else aside, you're like, no, I still want to do this. I love that. So you mentioned that you were kind of, you sort of had the writing bug from a very young age, like elementary, primary school. Now, was there anything like that kind of got you into writing that you can recall, or do you recall like the first story that you wrote, like that very early on kind of aspect of your writing?
Wow. I don't think there was any particular trigger or any sort of moment. Like I do remember even being as young as like 6 or 7 and, writing some stories. I remember, I think, maybe in grade 2, I was maybe like 8 or 9 years old. And I remember back in the day, we had those big, bulky, colorful MacBooks or
Mhm.
Mac, the actual Macs. So there's like,
Right.
those
Yeah.
like round, yeah. And the teachers at the time were saying, oh, just like, try to figure out how to work this computer thing and start writing things. And I might have written a poem about a kangaroo or something like that. I don't know.
Mhm.
But it's like little memories of just, I guess, writing and feeling like it was a way to express myself
Mhm.
that yeah, that sort of has stuck with me, and sort of all through school. And it was always a way to just basically let my mind just feel open and not feel too constrained by other things, like other things that I'd be studying. Yeah, essentially, writing was never a thing that was like a chore.
Mm.
Even when it came to like writing essays and things like that, there was still some creative liberty that let me, write in a certain way to get an idea across, for example. But yeah, I'd say it's just probably more so the medium itself has always been a thing for me that's been very liberating.
Interesting. I like that. No, that's really,
Mm.
really cool. Yeah, my personal story kind of starts way back in primary school as well. Second grade,
Mm.
actually, I was in a creative writing contest. That's my earliest memory of kind of being excited about writing. So I love that you had kind of a similar start from a young age.
Yeah.
So, how would you describe your specific writing style? Like, what are some things readers can expect from your work?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually, and it's part of actually the reason why I wrote what I wrote, with my serial Slice of Death on
Hmm.
Substack. I'll get to that later, but essentially, I was trying to find my voice again after coming back from a 5 or 6 year hiatus,
Hmm.
and just from writing the serial and just like just doing the hard yards. I I guess I saw that my style tends to be quite, I call it plain, I guess. Like one of the ideas that I've come across while being on Substack is this notion of purple prose, right? Where
Hmm.
you write a quite flowery, quite really, not verbose, but I guess just really sort of like flowery prose that really almost goes overboard with describing features and things like that of
Hmm.
whatever, the landscape or of people. So if there's any sort of opposite to that, that would be my style. So I just say, oh, whatever, the ice cream was cold, basically. And I guess part of it is just trying to, not get too caught up in, I guess, what I feel is unnecessary sometimes.
Hmm.
And part of it is just probably like laziness. And I think the third part might just be sort of lack of time. But I found that just from getting the core ideas down that I'm trying to communicate, in my prose, at least the very bare bones are there. And then when it comes time to editing, I might sort of go in and I'll think, oh, what is a nice expression that I can put in here that communicates that specific idea I'm trying to get across? I
Hmm.
don't always get a specific nice flowery bit of prose or like a nice metaphor. And often I'll just leave it close to what it was when I put down that initial draft.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'd say pretty like pretty sort of plain. And for what it's worth, I think, it works for me. And I guess we'll see if that changes over time. But it just seems that, it's a style that just, sort of sits with my approach to writing, I guess.
Yeah, no, I like that approach a lot, honestly, because I think, especially in today's day and age, I'm sure you would agree. It's really hard to keep people's attention online.
Mm.
So, as you said, like when as much as I love beautiful, kind of purple prose type writing from time to time, I also really like it when the writer respects my time as the reader and is kind of efficient with like the pacing, with the descriptions, like you said, stuff like that. I feel like there's more value in that, especially in today's day and age. So that's why I think your style is absolutely valid, and if anything, better. Like I said, because it really just kind of gets to the heart of the matter, which I think is good.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, this might be going on a bit of a tangent, but I
Mhm.
think you hit a pretty good point there on the head, which is that, it's that notion of attention, and like, we don't want to talk about, how there's too many distractions and things like that, and there's like too many choices as well. um I How do I talk about this without going on a tangent? I've done some marketing work in the past, and I've also done marketing as a subject, or a course in university, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm sort of aware of, I guess, the ideas around keeping attention and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, with Slice of Death, that there were a few things that I was trying to do, and one of them was to keep my chapters to 500 words per chapter or so.
Mm-hmm.
They got longer as time passed because I was trying to fit in more stuff as we got to the end of the story. But it was as much me working to my constraints, just day to day with work and family and life.
Mm.
But then also just thinking, well, I do want readers. So, these might be on the shorter side, but if I can get a point across in 500 words or so, then I've got a story on my hands essentially. So it was a weird sort of little constraint, but it worked for me. And I've literally just published the 365th chapter, so it was essentially daily chapters for a year. So that still ends up being what, 365 times minimum 500ish or so. So a whole bunch of words. I think 180,000 or so.
Yeah.
So it's like that would be like maybe 4 sort of novellas, maybe, or like 2 longer books, I guess. But yeah, it was very much about respecting the reader's attention, but also working within my constraints as well.
Mm-hmm. No, I like that. Yeah, and it's interesting to hear that you have some experience in marketing as well. But yeah, really, at the end of the day, whether you're writing professionally or creatively, attention is the currency of the modern era. So it really is, I think, valuable what you're doing. I love the challenge too with the 500 words or so per chapter. Again, like as a reader, if I'm just objectively speaking, and you're asking me to read a series, and I know that the chapters are a bit on the shorter side like that, I'm going to be more inclined to dive in because I know I'll be able to get in and out relatively quickly, like, finish a chapter, right?
Yeah.
So that, I agree with the structure you've got going on there. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a bit of a double-edged sword. I think it makes it bingeable in that idea that they're shorter chapters, so that commitment, sort of per episode or per chapter, if you like, is less.
Mm-hmm.
But then the thing I didn't realize until a lot later was, it's a lot of actual chapters to read. And that is just like another strange constraint I put on myself, just almost as like a personal challenge. Like, no one sort of told me you've got to write a chapter every single day, but I basically did that essentially, or more so not writing, but then publishing every single day essentially. So seeing that many chapters, it's quite daunting. And that is almost, I guess, the other side of the coin, where if someone new's coming to it, they're like, oh, this looks interesting. It's complete, but it's got hundreds and hundreds of chapters. Like, can I commit to this sort of thing? So you do have to be in it to win it. But I do have some very good readers who manage to stick with me all the way to the end.
That's great. That's great. So yeah, with Slice of Death and with your writing in general, my next question I wanted to ask was what typical kind of genres do you tend to focus on? So for example, like how would you classify Slice of Death and then any other work that you do? Like what's your main genres?
Yeah, okay. Good question. I'll start with Slice of Death. I guess we've got to sort of focus on the idea that I'm coming back from not writing for a long time. I wanted to write in a genre that gave me the flexibility to not feel I was too pinned in by tropes or I guess something that I wasn't as interested in. In the past, when I was writing and publishing some stuff on Amazon, it was like urban fantasy. I dabbled in the lit RPG space, and it's like there is that, like, you wanting to write in like a hot niche, right? But in the end, I think that was part of the reason for the burnout, just that like, I didn't really feel them. Essentially, they didn't resonate with me. So then when I started again, this time around, I was like, well, what can I write that gives me that openness, that space to explore? And then It came back to this, I guess, almost like a subgenre of like anime or manga being slice of life.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've ever seen anything like that, it's very open ended. Like there's not really essentially a flow or a linear plot. It's just like individual like vignettes
Mm.
of stuff happening in the main character's life, and then you're sort of following along these random snippets in their life,
Mm-hmm.
and that sort of really spun out to, I guess, the premise where I was like, okay, cool, slice of life. I like playing with words. Let's just invert the concept and let's just say instead of life, it's death. So this is
Mm-hmm.
called slice of death.
Mm.
So what is this going to be about? And I'm like, okay, cool. So death is, say, the Grim Reaper. So is this going to be a slice of life story about the Grim Reaper? And then I just played with the idea, and then eventually got to the concept of it not being about the Grim Reaper or death, but actually about his first apprentice and him trying to figure out the notion of life and just being ready to fulfill his role as being the next Grim Reaper.
Okay. I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah. And then yeah, slice of life. That's definitely a genre that I have some familiarity with. And yeah, I as someone who loves a good title, yeah, slice of death. The way you inverted it was really fun. I like that a lot.
Thank you. Cheers.
So yeah, let's go ahead and dive into this serial of yours. So as you said, 365 chapters. So the is the story finished now, or is this like kind of the end of book one, or so like where have we left off after 365 chapters?
Yeah, no. Yeah, I think the story is pretty much done.
Hmm.
So I did finish off that last chapter, and the readers who have been with me have said, "Oh, this has been great little read." I probably can say, I mean, by the time I think this interview goes live, people will already see that there'll be an epilogue. So there'll be a nice last little finishing chapter, I guess. But yeah, essentially the whole thing will be complete. 365 chapters, a prologue, an epilogue, and I think as a whole, that's the story that's contained,
Hmm.
like within these chapters. There are sort of ideas here and there of what might happen in like a subsequent, I don't know, stage of the character stories. But I guess if I'm setting out to achieve my goal of finding my voice again and completing a story, actually was a big one. I've achieved them, because that was actually something that I did want to do, being like finishing something, because like many writers, you have these ideas and these concepts, and then you start writing, and then there's a new shiny thing, and it's like, oh my gosh, I need to start writing this thing, and then suddenly you have like 5 different whips,
Hmm.
and then it's like, I don't know where I am anymore. So yeah, I think that finishing the story itself has also been like a big priority on my list. So by ticking that off, I'm also quite happy with that. So like if I sort of leave it as it is now without any sort of sequel or like prequel,
Hmm.
I'm pretty happy with it as well. Yeah.
Okay. Absolutely. No, I love that. So yeah, my other question here with Slice of Death is
Mm.
I wanted to know, did you always plan on it being 365 chapters? Obviously that makes sense, one per day, but I was wondering, like, was that the plan from the beginning?
Yeah, I guess there are sort of two reasons to it. One of them I've already spoken to a bit, which is that I guess it was more so a personal challenge, just to like to do something a little bit left of field. I'm a bit weird like that, where
Mhm.
I guess I'm quite into building good habits. And I thought, well, putting everything else aside, like writing a story with a plot, what can I sort of do on a pretty semi-regular basis that will help me get good again at writing? And I thought, well, if I can write 500 words a day and write this story, then by the end of it, I'll have this like massive story, but it'll be complete essentially. So that part sort of fits in with, I guess, how I operate as a person, using habits or micro habits to advance myself.
Hmm.
But the other part actually does figure into the plot a bit more. So for anyone who's read the story, essentially you'll sort of go through seasonal arcs, like the actual seasons. So right now, in the Northern Hemisphere, it's obviously getting into summer, and while the story itself is based in my hometown of Melbourne here in Australia, I've created this sort of strange mirror version of Melbourne where everything is actually inverted, and it does follow the seasons in the Northern Hemisphere. And I had some, side characters appear for different seasons, and then those side characters basically, do interact with the main characters, and then do figure into the plot as well. So it was very much sort of like, day to day, how does the narrative move forward with these characters, and what significance does it have with the seasons of like real time as you're reading the story? I guess I wanted it to be something that my readers could read and sort of almost experience alongside with my characters as they sort of lived and felt the change of seasons. So I wanted it to be quite visceral in that sense. And there are a few readers that I can see who are, with me here in Australia, and like I think they've had to suspend their disbelief and be like, okay, hold on, like I know that we're actually in winter right now. Like, what are you saying? But the majority have been, in the Northern Hemisphere. So then I think that helps with that immersion to have them feel like, okay, cool, like I'm here with Eva and with Taylor and with Zoe, so they can sort of have that same sense of, I guess the seasons changing and the story moving along with them.
Yeah, I really, really love that. That feels like it would be super immersive. So that it's so cool that you managed to tie everything together like that and really make it impactful to the narrative. Now, as you were writing this, did you have like an outline kind of already set in stone? Or are you more of kind of like a discovery type writer where you sort of kind of jump in and just see where it goes? Or like what did that look like as far as planning the series?
Yeah. Glad you asked that. Yeah, because I think these are always really fun questions to ask and to understand for different writers. As far as I know, just from stalking yourself on Substack, you're a bit of a pantser, and I would say that I'm in the same boat. When I started writing like all those years ago, I just sort of sat down and like wrote, and just like whatever came out was just basically stuck more or less. And that was also part of my process for rediscovering my voice as I was writing the story. I wanted to see if that was, I guess, my natural style. And for the most part, it was. I would say that as we got towards the end, I'm trying to keep track of all of these loose plot ends and things like that.
Right.
There were some notes that I kept in a Google Keep doc on the side, but every time I tried to, I guess, sit down and like outline what happens in a specific week or a specific day, it would end up just being more of a one-liner, sort of, like these are the vibes you like want to hit. And then I think the specific outlining only really came into effect when we got to the key sort of climax chapters, which were basically towards the end, like chapters 350 something or something like that, where I had the images of what was happening, like almost in this like episodic format in my head, like as I'm watching it on Netflix or something like that. So I was trying to like hit those specific scenes and write them at the same time. In those cases, I would outline, and the outlines themselves would probably be as long as the chapter, if not longer. But they were the exception, not the norm. So yeah, very much it was more so about just like, have the framework, sort of space it out. If you're writing in these sort of seasonal arcs, there's going to be 13 weeks. Every week has seven days. I really tried to not put in too many filler chapters, because I think that was also the risk when you're putting this artificial constraint of, having one chapter published per day. And I think for the most part, the chapters, did advance the plot along bit by bit, even if it was only like a tiny bit. but yeah, so basically, to answer the question, like long story short, mostly still a pantser
Hmm.
and plotting when I need to. Like, yeah, I don't sort of plot, the entire arc. I
Right.
sort of I let the words and the story come to me.
Yeah, I think that's a good balance, especially for this series in particular, because as you were describing it, and the reader kind of, living through this year alongside the characters,
Mm.
I feel like the more natural approach is to kind of, with you as the writer, experiencing the events almost in real time as well as you're writing it, right?
Correct.
So
Yep. Yep.
I think for this project in particular, that was absolutely the right approach because I was curious what your answer would be, and it makes sense. So yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. So
Right.
yeah, the actual cast of the series, you mentioned a few names just a bit ago here. Who are
Yes.
the main characters, if you wouldn't mind giving us a little like intro for the characters that we can expect to see, and then if there's any side characters that kind of come and go over the course of the seasons, I'd love to hear about those too.
Yep. 100%. Yep. So the three characters that I mentioned before were Eva, Taylor, and Zoe.
Okay.
So Eva is our male main character, and he is Death's apprentice.
Mm-hmm.
So he's the soul that was picked out of billions in the underworld from Death. Death chose him and said, "Cool, this is now your role. You're going to be my apprentice. You're going to replace me." And the way that Death sort of dresses up the notion of what Eva does is that he says, "You're going on a vacation," but actually it's also an apprenticeship. And he basically sends him up to Earth with barely any sort of understanding of how to be a human. And he says, "You have a year, figure things out, and then it will help you become a really good reaper." Right.
Mm, okay.
And it's essentially just this whole notion of like him figuring out life and just being really awkward and doing things like that.
Mm,
So that's one character. And then Taylor is the second character. It's the one that ever meets basically from the second chapter. So after he arrives on Earth, he's just sort of stumbling about. He's very disorientated. And then he finds Taylor, and she works in an ice cream store. And she's like sort of stressing out because someone that she hired became a no-show. And then Eva's like, "Oh, what do I do? What do I do?" And Death can talk to Taylor. Death can talk to Eva telepathically and says, "You know what? You probably need some money. So why don't you go in and talk to Taylor and see if she can give you a job,
yeah.
essentially."
Yeah.
So like there's this interesting, sort of like double life kind of thing where his main job is still reaping souls as the apprentice to Death,
Mm.
but then he's also scooping ice cream on the side. And then
I
that
love
leads
it.
to like, yeah, and it basically sort of leads to interesting things happening, as he's sort of learning about the customers and things like that. Yeah, so that's always interesting there as well. Zoe comes a bit later.
Mm.
She essentially is a love interest. So she comes at some point, and I won't say too much, but essentially, yeah, she does have a part to play. But those three characters are, I guess, the sort of main trio that the story is based around. And then for each season, I do basically loop in some Greek gods.
Mm.
So yeah, again, I won't sort of go off tangent too much because I'll start gushing and then this will go way too long. But the whole story sort of came about because of the Supergiant Games game Hades. So I
Okay.
played Hades,
Yeah.
loved the game, and because of that, it just inspired me to like write a sort of Greek mythology story.
Hmm.
But I didn't want to sort of focus on the so-called main gods. No Zeus, no Poseidon, no Aphrodite. The primordials are the ones that get featured in the story, and for each sort of season, there is one primordial that I focus on. We're talking like the likes of Chaos, who's like one of the first gods, essentially.
Hmm.
There is Gaia, who we know is the goddess of the earth. Nyx, goddess of the night. And then we also have Kronos, god of time. So they all have their own roles to play, and yeah, they interact with Ever and to some extent the other side characters. Um, but yeah, it makes awful like really interesting play, I guess, and yeah, it's been really fun.
That is awesome. Shout out to Supergiant Games and Hades too. Fantastic game. Really good inspiration there.
Fantastic. Yeah.
This is the gamer in me talking, but have you played Hades 2 yet by chance?
I have, yes.
Yeah.
So Hades 2, yeah, again, this is gonna go like off topic, but it was really hard to not play Hades 2 when it
Mm,
came out because I think it was out in November last year.
that sounds
As
about
in
right.
like yeah, I think the alpha version was out already like sort of early 2025.
Mm-hmm.
But then I didn't play any of that. Only when it was basically like fully published did it become more on my radar. And then at the insistence of some Substack people, I eventually did get it. I have a mate who got me a ROG essentially, or he
Mm,
didn't get it for me, but he said, "Oh, you know what? Like, get this handheld PC. I'll help you install SteamOS, and you get back into gaming, right?"
right.
And I think at the time I was writing chapter 300 and whatever 50, so I was getting really close. I'm like, I need to finish this first. Like, let me finish it. But then I couldn't wait. So then I started playing it as I was writing it, and you know, it was interesting seeing some parallels in the story. Like I hadn't seen any of Hades 2, but then some of the characters in that game, you know, did appear in my story, not in the same capacity, but
Right.
by name, sure. Yeah, but
Yeah.
amazing game. It's been so much fun playing it.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, I've been kind of someone my entire life. I've always been inspired by gaming, and so it's always exciting to me when I hear about other writers, getting inspired by certain games. Now, I have to imagine, has this happened elsewhere in your life? Like, have other games kind of inspired writing for you in the past?
Well, I would say, generally speaking, yes.
Hmm.
For me, I've always been a Nintendo guy.
Yeah.
So for me, it would be the Legend of Zelda. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could sort of tie that into love of epic fantasy and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, though, I don't think I've written stories that are too in depth within that type of space. Nothing that's like too middle age, medieval type of thing. Like there's been ideas that have bubbled away in my brain, but I've never sort of put pen to paper, so to speak. But
Right.
definitely for a lot of my younger years, I did read a lot of that type of story. Yeah, so games definitely have been a big part of storytelling and imagination, and I guess it's like yeah, basically it's the best games are immersive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think wanting to create that kind of experience that you feel when you're fighting a boss or something like that. I think it is always a really key goal as a writer. It's wanting to basically create the scene that you can see in your head, and to hope that it lands, I guess, when readers read that scene, and yeah, basically hoping that they're feeling the same things as you felt when you wrote it.
Right, right. Yeah, the exact quote is escaping me, but there's a quote, I want to say it might be like Stephen King or something like that, about how
Mm,
like imagination starts with the writer, but it finishes in the mind of the reader. So it's like you have to kind of get the reader, like on the right path to imagining and feeling what you want them to feel. But to our point earlier about the purple prose, you don't want to overdo it where you're
yeah.
describing too much, you're spending too much time on it, because then you kill the pacing, right?
Yeah.
So it's that careful balance.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, no, absolutely. So another thing I wanted to ask you too about Slice of Death here is, um, what are some of the kind of again, like trying to create like a certain, again, like kind of feeling in the reader. What are some of the emotions and kind of takeaways that you hope people get when they're reading this series in particular?
That's a good question. Yeah. I guess with this story, I wanted to really let the characters speak for themselves. And I guess thinking about the genre being slice of life, um, a lot of the feelings that are prevalent in that genre sort of relate to, I guess, almost. I like to say the main feeling, if it is a feeling, is tenderness
Okay.
and maybe just like vulnerability as well,
Mm.
where as you're sort of zooming in and seeing these mini episodic type sequences in people's lives, um, I guess it feels intimate. And for me, the main idea is just trying to create enough of a scene where it just feels like you're sitting in the corner and watching, ever talk to a god, or like, talk to Taylor, or like talk to Zoe, and then, there's a specific conversation they have, and then, you sort of see how that might change him in like the slightest way.
Mm.
But it's those sorts of things where it might even happen, and it does happen, like day to day. You're just sitting in like a coffee shop or something. You just happen to overhear like one little snippet of the next table over, and you lack context. But then the words they say is, like, for one thing, they're like enough to capture your attention. But then for another, it sounds like it might be something that's really key to these two people and what's happening in their lives. So I guess I wanted to create that sort of feeling. I don't know what that feeling is, but I think by describing it, hopefully it makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's almost like voyeuristic, I guess, but like not in like a pervy way.
Right.
It's you're like, it's a sense of intimacy, and like being permitted to like look into people's lives and to almost share their growth.
Mm-hmm.
So like, yeah, there is that element of like tenderness and like vulnerability, and I guess almost feeling like you're growing along with the characters.
Right, right. Gosh, yeah, no, that's incredible. Really, really good answer there. I mean,
Thank you.
if I wasn't already sold on this series, that would have done it. Like that was a great overview there. Um,
Appreciate
so my next question here, now that that the story in the series here is complete, I'm curious, what's the next step for Slice of Death? Like, is this something where you're going to potentially publish it or try to shop it around, or like, or does it just live on Substack? I'm guessing as another option.
Yeah.
So yeah, what's the plan?
Yeah, no, it's definitely it's a good one to ask, because it does put me like on the spot. And for me, I do thrive on that sort of pressure, where it's not like negative pressure, but then it's like, well, if I'm sort of talking about this, then I'm sort of almost like verbally committing to it. But like, one thing that I've been wanting to do, and I tried to do after I finished the initial draft, was start getting it into like an audio form.
Mm,
Where I thought, you know what, like, I can see that Substack has this podcast feature. If I just do like a read through and still make it episodic with me just basically reading through the chapter, that can give me some more mileage out of the story. So I did try starting to do that, but I'm not as natural in that medium.
mm,
Like, I'm happy to basically talk, and like I can just like talk and talk and talk. But for me, actually, the hurdle was playing with Audacity and just
mhm.
the software packages, and just trying to figure out the different buttons and things like that. So if it was as simple as just using my phone and like making a recording, and then somehow having it being auto cleaned up so that all of the static noise was gone, and there wasn't any sort of like, if there was some way to like have a built-in pop filter or something, for example, like,
Mm.
that'd be great. But I think like those little things that I have to sit down and tidy up do sap my time and energy.
Right.
So I'd like to do that, and I'd like to say that that will happen now that the story is basically done. That might be my next sort of little project.
Hmm.
Um, I I think longer term, I don't know. Like it was never my intention to sell the story. I think
Mm-hmm.
it was more so always going to be this gift to the people, and I guess to readers, and for anyone who was nice enough, I guess, to sort of share in the journey, because I did have those goals of wanting to find my voice and wanting to create this story, and like I've achieved them. So um yeah, the monetary side of things was never something that crossed my mind. If
Mm-hmm.
anything, if there was any sort of like, like proper, I'm saying proper with like my talking marks. You can't see my fingers, but talking. If there's any sort of like proper, I guess, reward from this, like maybe more exposure.
Mm-hmm.
Hence why I would do audio stuff. From chatting with certain Substackers, I think there is the moonshot dream of turning it into like a streaming series on something like Netflix,
Oh
because
yeah.
I think it lends itself quite well to something like that, where
Mm-hmm.
it truly is seasonal, and I've got it starts with the summer arc, and then it moves into fall, and then into spring, and then into sort of like another the last season. Then it's 4 seasons, and then every season has 13 weeks, and then we have seven days per week, and like it might not be as long as like 1 day per episode, but it might be 13 episodes per season, which I think is probably pretty standard, I think,
Mm-hmm.
for an anime. So who knows, like that could be one thing, but I would have no idea where to begin with, who to talk to about getting things, animated. Yeah, so I think that'd be like a fun thing to do. But yeah, bit more of a moonshot goal, and who knows, it might be something that is a possibility in the future.
I love that. I'm obviously rooting for you because I was literally picturing as you were describing it. I was like, yeah, this I kind of pictured it as a Netflix series in my head with the way that it's
Oh,
structured and
great.
everything. So yeah, no,
Yeah,
I could see that being really really good. And I have to say too, the audio version in the meantime, as kind of a near term goal, I think is amazing too because I could see this being just a phenomenal kind of sort of cozy audio drama type thing. Um,
yeah,
yeah. So yeah, definitely looking forward to that. But I could see it being a series too. That's a wonderful goal for it.
awesome,
Um,
thanks.
yeah. So now that it's actually done, do you have kind of another project in mind to start up on Substack? Like are you going to jump into a new series, for example, or are you going to maybe like catch your breath and do some smaller stuff? Like what's the rest of 2026 looking like for you now that this is done?
Yeah. I feel like in terms of writing, there isn't a specific project that I'm wanting to move to straight away.
Yeah.
This has been, quite the odyssey, I guess you can say.
Hmm.
And even when I finished the last chapter, or I think it would have been April, yeah, maybe sort of April. Like I like to say that it's just been resting, but I think it's just been like me waiting for the chapters to publish as well, as I've set it to that daily publishing cadence. So mentally and emotionally, I've still been quite switched on. And, even seeing like the 365th chapter today being published, is this real sense of like relief, like, okay, I'm finished now. So yeah, it wasn't sort of like I was necessarily like recovering from finishing this whole thing when I finished the first draft earlier in the year.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I don't think I'll be writing straight away. There are a few different sort of little ideas that have sort of come into my mind, but my feeling, my tendency is that it wouldn't be a continuation of the main story. It might be something completely different. Yeah, I don't know. I might be sort of doing things that are more Substack coded, with people sort of doing anthologies and like sort of little themed submissions and things like that. I think that's been one of the really fun things on Substack. And when you're committed to a serial, it's just like, well, like it'd be fun to join in, but it's also like each one of those things is a time commitment, right?
Right.
So I think I'd be probably doing more of those, but it's really just what captures me.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess for me, it's I don't want to just write for the sake of writing. I guess yeah, for me, like the stories have to sort of capture me, and yeah, those instances have happened a few times, even throughout the year, where I have made exceptions to write other things. But the idea of being sort of taken or captured by ideas is something that I want to leave myself open to,
Mm-hmm.
because that for me is just it's just one of those things that I think makes writing such a joy. I don't want it to be something that, oh, I've got this deadline, I've got to write this thing, and I've got to sort of continue writing this story. That in itself is a challenge which I sort of chose to do, but I think as long as you have the option to let the inspiration come to you, no matter sort of where it comes from, then you have that calling as a writer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, and I was thinking too. This is such a huge project, like this number of chapters, the cadence of it, and everything.
Mm.
It's just so impressive that you're now at the finish line because um I again the name of the survey escapes me, but there's a stat that I've confirmed every time I mention it. I Google it to
Mm.
make sure it's still correct, but it's basically the stat that only like 3% of writers
Yeah.
on average finish a project like this, and so it's just incredible that it's finished there. Now, when you were working on it,
Mm.
again, like with so many chapters and so much time committed here, were there those moments? I have to imagine, like any writer, there were those moments where maybe struggled to kind of push forward. Like, so I'm curious, like, do you have any advice for myself and other writers when it comes to a big project like this? What was like some of your tactics to kind of get through those tougher times where maybe, the words weren't flowing or you were just, kind of starting to, get exhausted or life got in the way, stuff like that.
Yep.
I'm curious how you
Mm.
push through.
Oh, yeah, great. Yeah, it's a good question, 100%. And for this sort of thing, happy to share sort of my own experiences, because I think just seeing different people like on Substack and beyond, and just I guess how they go about tackling this particular problem is something that everyone should discuss, just because we need more genuine human voices, right? So like the more that people are able to you know um, s- stay creative, like the better it is.
Yep.
But for me, like definitely, this was always going to be an endeavor, and I think while the project itself is daunting in that it's daily publishing and having that consistency, uh, because I've done things like that before in terms of like writing stuff which is a bit more pulpy, and I guess I've sort of exercised the muscle before, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it wasn't new to me, basically writing in general. I know that for anyone who's starting out writing, it can seem like a lot to just even sit down and write. But I guess there were times that I definitely didn't feel like writing, but I still sat down and wrote. And it'd be 11:30 at night, getting towards midnight, and I'd be like half asleep, but I'd get something down, and
Hmm.
then I'd feel good about it. So like part of it is the resilience which just comes from doing the thing. And I think you learn about yourself a lot as not just a writer and a person, when you push through those moments. But then the other pleasing thing for me was that I also came to be more aware of myself when the wall, I guess, or like the barrier was insurmountable that day.
Mm.
And I'd sit down, I'd open my laptop and be like, you know what? No, I can't write today. And then I just close it. And I think knowing how that difference felt was key.
Mm.
And it's not necessarily straightforward to define what that is. But then I guess respecting your mind and like your body when it does happen, um, is key. And for me, that was definitely key. If I'd pushed through those days, then I'd probably feel like a lot worse for it, and maybe I'd be even more burnt out.
Mm.
Like for me, the bigger tragedy would be to push through irrespective, and then get to a level of burnout where I really couldn't come back off the canvas, right?
Right.
So keeping in mind that I was committing to this was going to be that sort of main consideration. So it meant that I'd have to give myself grace when I really needed it.
Mm. Hmm.
So I think having like a clear goal in mind helps.
Yeah.
Um, Working within yourself, but pushing yourself a little bit more to just get more creatively fit, if that makes sense,
Hmm.
is good. But then still being nice enough to forgive yourself if you don't hit your arbitrary writing goals is also key, because like that's the truth. A lot of the time it is arbitrary. Like you say, oh, today I'm going to write whatever, 1,000 words, but then you might write 700, and then it's like that's still words like in the bank, right?
Hmm. Yep.
um so yeah, it's a lot about self-talk, being kind enough to yourself to forgive yourself if you can't do it, and knowing when enough is enough for the day.
Right. No, fantastic answer. Yeah, because I myself have I feel like I can put out short stories and flash fiction on Substack till the cows come home, no problem. But for some reason, my longer projects are the ones where it's like I hit those downturns, and I struggle to get out of it sometimes. So that's really really good
Oh,
advice. Yeah.
yeah, sure.
So yeah, speaking of like the Substack community, something I wanted to ask you is, how long have you been on Substack now, and what is your general kind of impression of the community here?
Yeah. Substack really has been a godsend, hey. Yeah, I've been around. Ooh, it'd be pretty soon to actually be a year, actually.
Oh, nice.
So if I go back to my very first post, actually, because essentially I actually started sharing the story on Royal Road.
Okay.
So Royal Road is another sort of like essentially writer and reader community, if you like.
Hmm.
And I feel like it's a bit more uh, maybe like directed towards male readers. You do see like a lot of sort of action type, lit RPG, swashbuckling type stories and things like that. And my general feeling is that Slice of Death is a bit more, I guess, not necessarily like aimed at like males or females, but it's just more of a like a story essentially.
Yeah.
So it did get views, but it didn't get any engagement, and I guess that was ultimately what I was after. Like I wanted comments, I wanted people to be like to tell me like what they were thinking about the story. But to answer the original question, it looks like the first the first chapter was 1st of July,
Hmm.
but I'd started probably writing the story I think around the 1st of June. Hence why the story finished 1st of June, like today for yourself. Today
Right.
is it's already the 2nd of June for me here.
Right.
But if I'd started publishing on Substack from the very first chapter, then it would be like one whole year. But yeah,
Hmm.
I think the very first chapter was 1st of July. I feel like I was probably online on Substack in maybe towards the back end of June, maybe June 20 something.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, with the community, it's been great. I've definitely found readers, which is the primary goal.
Hmm.
But the other thing that I didn't think I would find are friends,
Yeah.
and I don't think people set out to find them, but it's just something that has happened, I guess. And time again, you just hear of people coming to Substack, and then it's like, you know what, like, why are people so nice here?
Right.
um, like they sit down, they write the comment. It's really in depth. They're really reading, and like they read between the lines even, and it's like, wow, it's a level of being seen that doesn't happen anywhere online, and it's such a nice feeling.
Hmm. Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head. Exactly. Yeah, it is truly, truly special. And that's
Mhm.
amazing coming up on a year here. again, like there's so many milestones with this project of yours, like wrapping up when it has, it's going to be like your first year on Substack, obviously.
Mm.
You've been posting chapters for a whole year. It's really inspiring stuff. It's really, really cool. And I
Thank you.
love that you're on the show here right as we're coming up on these milestones. It's just an awesome time to kind of talk about it. I've got one more question for you. This is something I ask everyone who comes on the show, and I know I already asked for your advice a little bit here, so I apologize for rehashing. But my final question is, what's a piece of advice you would give someone who's just starting out on their creative journey, or maybe like yourself, they took a long break and they just came back? So at that moment where they're picking things back up again, what's one piece of advice you would give them?
Yeah, one piece of advice. I would say it would be to take your time to really find a story that you feel compelled to tell. There's literally so many different stories out there, right?
Yeah.
But ultimately, there's going to be one that somehow finds its way into your brain, and it just won't ever sort of let go. And it'll feel different. And it's just really about keeping yourself open to that story and letting it come to you. I think that's probably one of the key things that make writers who they are. Well, I guess anyone sort of creative, really, where like you might have, a brief or something, and then you write to the brief. But then when it comes to writing a serial, this is fully on you. It's on you as the writer to tell the story that you want to tell. So there's no need to rush it. You just write it the way you want to write it, and yeah, just stay open, stay committed, but also stay patient.
Right. No, phenomenal advice. Phenomenal. I love that answer. All right. Well, thank you again, KJ, for coming on to the show here. I'm really excited for people to learn more about Slice of Death, and I really hope that you see a surge of new readers because I've already read some of it, but I'm really excited to dive even deeper. Just because, again, like the way you described it was so perfect. Really, really excited to check out more of it, and obviously excited to see what you do next too. It sounds like a world, like you said, that can have a lot of stories in it. So, that's really great stuff. But yes, thank you again for coming on to the show. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks for the opportunity, Bradley. And yeah, I'll be seeing you around.
All right. And a huge shout out to KJ Harlow again for coming on to the show. I'm really excited to see what he does next. And if you're in the mood for a fun and unique slice of life story, then I highly recommend checking out Slice of Death. You'll find a link to KJ's profile and his series in the show notes. Next up, we'll take a look at what's happening next week on Substack, and I'll share a few writing challenges for you to check out now that the Halls of Pandemonium is over. So next week on Substack, I'll be transitioning back to normal, quote unquote. I'm going to layer in my usual weekly subscriber chat threads. I'm going to bring back my Mindful Monday checkpoint articles, and of course, next Saturday will be the return of the power-up prompts. While I work on that, you should check out some of these new writing challenges that have recently launched. I have 3 here that I think everyone should check out. So let's take a quick look at each. First up is June Poetry Adventure, hosted by Verdant Butterfly. This one launched on June 1st, and it offers a month full of poetry prompts. Each day brings a new piece of the adventure, inviting you to write everything from fairy tales to folklore and more. To give you some examples, the first few prompts were a haiku, and then there was a limerick and an acrostic poem. So Butterfly is here to show us all just how varied the world of poetry can truly be. I myself am looking forward to jumping in and trying something new, so I'll be checking it out for sure. Check the show notes for a link to her post with all the latest prompts. My second challenge I want to shout out is the Cozy Quill Fantasy Writing Competition, hosted by Tamsin G. This one launches on July 1st, but Tamsin is already accepting registrations. The idea here is that you pay $30 to enter, and for that contribution, you will receive detailed and constructive feedback on your submission to the contest. Not only that, but 30% of all entries go into a prize pool with a guaranteed minimum prize for the winners. It's a really cool setup and a great way to get some very valuable feedback on your work. Check the show notes for a link to learn more. And last but not least, we have a new challenge being hosted over on Scriptorum, which of course hosted the Halls of Pandemonium. Prompts from the Valley Nis is a weekly challenge happening this month, hosted by Hazel Allen. The concept here is writing prompts that implore you to write stories and poems inspired by one of Edgar Allan Poe's works. Very on brand for this publication, and I'm very excited to see some of the offerings here. Check the show notes for a link to learn more. And that's all I've got for you this week, my friends. I hope that you've enjoyed this truly packed episode, which may be our longest one yet. But in any case, now that we're at the end here, I'm wishing you all a productive week of writing that is fun and cathartic and everything that you need from the work that you do. Because we all need an escape, I think, these days, and writing is a perfect way to do that. But in any case, I really appreciate you sticking with me to the end here, and I'll see you all next week. This is Bradley Ramsey, signing off. Well, we made it back. Now what?
I, for one, will be taking a nap. What about you, cousin?
Well, I suppose I should be getting back home. I'm sure my family misses me. There's never a dull moment when you have 30,000 mouths to feed.
Wait, you have 30,000 kids?
That's right. It's quite the large family, but actually on the small side for a lamprey. Also, one of them isn't even a lamprey at all. He's a cuttlefish. We adopted him many years ago. He just moved out recently. They grow up so fast.
Hey, wait a second. Viscount, are you saying that Voidy is your son?
Yes, you didn't know that.
No, I didn't. That's a big lore drop to hide in the end of a podcast episode, don't you think?
It's fine. Real ones will understand.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Speaking of Voidy, I should see what he's been up to.